Hi, my name is Robert Chelle, Chelle Law, and my law firm assists physicians with employment contract issues. Today I'm going to talk about are physicians employees or independent contractors? Kind of a simple explanation. It depends upon the contract that you signed. So for the vast majority of physicians, they will be employees, which means they have to sign an employment agreement with the new employer. For some specialties, dermatology, anesthesiology, I find those two are much more likely to sign an independent contractor agreement versus an employment agreement. So a physician can be an employee and can be an independent contractor as well. It just depends upon what contract they signed. So let's kind of go through each one. So an employment agreement, the physician is an employee. They'll receive a W-2. They'll receive benefits, health, vision, dental, life, disability. And then they'll have their medical license, DEA registration. There'll be some amount paid for continuing medical education. They'll receive some kind of paid time off. So all the normal benefits that would go along with being an employee, anyone who signed an employment agreement would normally get. The salary structure, usually it would be, or it could be a base salary. It could be based on net collections. It could be based on RVUs. It could be a combination of all three. It just kind of depends. But in a normal situation, if you're joining a hospital, you're joining a physician-owned practice, healthcare network, you're almost always going to be an employee. So let's take anesthesiologist. Maybe they're kind of moonlighting on the side, working infrequently for a group. They signed an independent contractor agreement. And so the differences for that will be instead of receiving a W-2 at the end of the year, the physician would receive a 1099. And so in that scenario, no taxes will be taken out of whatever they earned. They just get a check. Then they're responsible to pay the taxes to the state, if you're in a state that has that, and then obviously the federal government as well. In a independent contractor agreement, normally the physician is going to have to pay for their own licensing, DEA registration. They won't get time off. They won't receive any benefits at all. The employer usually will pay for the malpractice insurance policy, but then you also have to think about in that scenario, all right, well, who pays for tail insurance? The normal compensation structure in an independent contractor agreement would be not a base salary, but usually some kind of either net collections based or maybe encounter based. You get a flat fee for doing, a certain service, something like that. Kind of ideally, the independent contractor agreement, you're supposed to be able to kind of get in, get out of it without a lot of hassle. The schedule should be up to the physician. The IRS has kind of a 20-factor test to determine whether someone is an employee or an independent contractor. The physician practices that utilize independent contractor agreements, the benefit to them is obvious. They one, don't have to pay employment tax on any of the wages that they provide to the physician, and then they don't have to give any benefits either. The benefit to the physician of utilizing the independent contractor agreement is usually the compensation is a little bit better. So the percentages for net collections might be a little bit higher. The RVU thresholds might be a little bit lower. The compensation factor for the RVUs might be a little bit higher. They would normally create an LLC or something similar and then be able to deduct all of the expenses associated with their practice for that employer. So they could claim the things I just talked about, the licensing, DEA, if they have to pay for malpractice, that as well, any kind of business expenses, office, whatever it is, they could theoretically deduct those over time. which one is better than another? Well, generally, at least I find, the physician's going to come out ahead under an employment agreement versus an independent contractor agreement. In some scenarios, they're just not going to have the choice. The employer could just say, you will only be an independent contractor for us. We will never issue an employment agreement to you. Take it or leave it. And in that scenario, the physician just has to make a decision. One thing that comes up occasionally is someone who's never been a 1099 employee before. So they've never been an independent contractor before. They're getting all this money from the job that they're providing. And then at the end of the year, they think, oh man, I didn't either budget for this or wasn't sending in, the quarterly earnings to the IRS. They get to the end of the year and they haven't saved all the money that they've made. So absolutely make certain, if you're working as a 1099 employee, that you are budgeting and setting aside whatever the amount is necessary to pay the taxes. Worst thing that could happen is get to the end of the year, money's not there to pay the taxes. So can physicians be employees or independent contractors? Certainly, they could be either one. They could be both. If they work as an employee somewhere else, moonlight somewhere else as an independent contractor, it simply just comes down to what kind of agreement that they signed. Independent contractor agreements are, in my opinion, much less complicated, usually much shorter than employment agreements, simply because they're not going through all of the benefits and those types of things that a normal employer would offer. So it's usually easier to get through an independent contractor agreement, but certainly there are negotiating points for each one. So anyway, that's the difference between the two. Hopefully that's helpful. If you have any questions, you can always call my law firm at the phone number listed below in the description, or you can always reach us through our website, chellelaw.com, CHELLE law.com. Again, my name's Robert Chelle. I appreciate you watching the video. Thanks.